Hello and welcome to Chintan Speaks, a podcast brought to you by the Chintan Research Foundation, where we bring you timely conversations on issues of geopolitical significance that are shaping India and the world today. I'm your host, Dr. Bhavna Singh, a visiting fellow with the Center for Geopolitics and Strategic Studies at CRF. Today's episode is a deep dive into China's policies on defense and its architecture in light of the announcements at the fourth plenum and its recent white paper on arms control and disarmament, and also the US's national security strategy document. Our guest today is one of the most authoritative figures on China who needs absolutely no introduction. Mr. Jayadeva Ranade is the president of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. He has twice been a member of the National Security Advisory Board, first from 2013 to 2015 and then 2023 to 2025. He retired as the Additional Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, Government of India in August 2008. And since then, he has done extensive research on China and penned down his experiences for the benefit of all scholars in the China studies community. We welcome you, Ranade sir. It's a privilege to have you with us today. Sir, we would like you to throw some light on China's current efforts on military modernization, which have been accelerating over the past few decades, and where do you believe these might go in the coming future?
Thank you, Bhavna. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this podcast. I think it's a good initiative to reach out to the people who are interested in China and also to the general audience who would like to have some insights, may not be in depth, but at least of a general nature of what's going on in the world around them. As to your question, it's, China from the time, if I can just mention a couple of sentences on the history, from the time the Chinese Communist Party really began its march onto Beijing under Mao Zedong, the army has been a very important part of it. And they were earlier a irregular guerrilla force and then slowly became the Red Army. And there were a lot of Mao's lieutenants who were involved with him in this march until they captured Beijing and established the Chinese Communist Party as the sole political party. And as earlier you did mention quite correctly, Mao's adage was power flows from the barrel of the gun. And he applied that as far as China is concerned. So in the initial few years, you'll find that the PLA officers, after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, the Red Army became the People's Liberation Army. They had a preponderant representation in the top bodies of the Chinese Communist Party, which is the Political Bureau Standing Committee and the Politburo. So over time, of course, this was acceptable because a large number of the Communist Party cadres of senior rank had participated in the guerrilla warfare. Now, over time, the numbers began to come down. But here I'll point to two things which will fit in with your overall question. The first was Deng Xiaoping, when he came in, I think it was 1976, and he became Chief of General Staff of the PLA, and he was rehabilitated after his first purge. He decided that the PLA has to be really streamlined and improved. And he did two things. The first, he decided that there has to be a restructuring to prevent the PLA from remaining and functioning as a power center within the Chinese Communist Party. And that power center it had become because each of the military region commanders, as they were called then, and there were 11 of them, was actually, shall I say, a warlord in his own area. And they never moved. They inherited or took over certain posts and they remained there till their death. They selected the successor and most of the junior officers. So it became like an empire within an empire. And Deng Xiaoping did anticipate that in course of time, the Chinese Communist Party would not have that many, people with the PLA background at the higher levels. So he began rotating them, began changing them. There was a lot of opposition when he moved people from, let's say, for example, from Guangzhou to Heilongjiang and things like that, but the north to the east and all that. There was a lot of resistance, but he pushed it through. The second thing he did, and I'm mentioning this, though you may feel it's not directly relevant, is that he addressed the top PLA commanders at a conference in Beijing. That is one of the last things he did actually before being purged again. And there he literally berated them by saying that the army had become fat, they were slobs, they were not able to function properly. I mean, it was a very, very, shall I say, vitriolic speech that he gave. Basically, he said that the army is no longer capable of doing what it should be able to do. And he initiated or triggered the war with Vietnam in 1979 to teach Vietnam a lesson. And of course, the PLA, because of its sheer size, did sort of push the Vietnamese back, but they suffered a bloody dose, and that message did go down. Luckily for the PLA, if I may say, at that time, Deng Xiaoping was purged again, so they were spared his thing. But when he came back, he did try and rectify, and he did bring in some changes.
Right.
But relevant to today is that in 1979, when this happened, Deng Xiaoping had also rehabilitated Xi Jinping, that is the present president of China, his father, Xi Chongshun, who was in fact a comrade in arms of Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, but had been purged because he's an outspoken man, didn't agree with some of Mao's policies. So he was brought back. And Xi Jinping, who was, just a junior cadre, he was appointed Mishu, or the personal secretary, to Kang Piao, who was the defense minister at that time. The reason I mention this is that Xi Jinping therefore had a ringside seat to what all that was happening in the PLA and how the PLA performed in the war with Vietnam. So I think that background has come in handy to Xi Jinping, who of course has now initiated or did initiate some of the most major reforms. Now this is something that the reforms are on the anvil, they had been formulated, and Hu Jintao, that is Xi Jinping's predecessor, was supposed to actually implement them. But he was unable to. He was a person who was not a princeling, so he was not connected with the top leadership, except after becoming General Secretary of the party. He had no PLA background, no military background. He found it very difficult to push through the reforms, and he just let it be. But when Xi Jinping took over, he had obviously been planning, to take over and what he would do. One of the first things he did was to start working on the reforms. And I'll just conclude with the comment that we can come to the reforms in case you like. What he did, most extensive and far-reaching reforms that the PLA went through was with Xi Jinping. But the first thing that he did, the day after taking over as General Secretary of the party, the President of China and Chairman of the Military Commission, all three at the same time, which happened incidentally for the first time in 35 years. Earlier the posts came one after the other. This time it was done together. He called an enlarged meeting of the Military Commission, which means all the former and present commanders, etc. And there he said that henceforth, political reliability will be the key criteria for promotion of officers. In Deng Xiaoping's time, there was a lot of debate on more red than expert or more expert than red. Deng Xiaoping was very keen on professionalization of the army. But Xi Jinping turned the clock back to some extent, and he said politics will be important. And thereafter, he in fact added to the small moves that Hu Jintao had made on strengthening the position of the political commissar, who then began getting a stronger voice in the promotion of the field commanders. So, here just by way of explanation to your audience, China has this unique system of, let's say, dual command. They have a field commander, like we have in our army. And there's also a political commissar who reports to the political masters and ensures that the political line of the party is implemented, accepted, assimilated and implemented in the PLA. So that's how the initial thing started, and that's how Xi Jinping actually came to the helm of affairs there.
Right, sir. It's very interesting to see how his own experiences during the Vietnam War have given him such a deep insight into the working of the PLA. So, which is like the reason why Xi Jinping has initiated these reforms. So, how do you kind of see the personal changes at the fourth plenum that were recently made, and do you think this trend will continue of the political reliability being the major factor, at least as long as Xi Jinping is in power, or perhaps he could be there in power for another term, if you foresee anything on that aspect?
Yeah, you're right. His being the Mishu or the personal secretary to Kang Piao gave him certainly a lot of insight, and he himself had a military rank for a short while. So he was familiar with the PLA. Because of his father, Shi Chongshun, who was the commander of the 4th Field Army, he also had linkages with other military families, and I think all that helped him. But here, as a prelude to the changes that he began doing, he did two things. He brought the PLA under the purview of the Central Discipline Inspection Commission, which is the anti-corruption watchdog body of the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
It had never happened before. And this he did, it's within days of taking over. The first National People's Congress was held in 2013, which is when he brought the PLA under that. And after that, he unleashed, if I may use the word, a anti-corruption drive in the PLA and felled a lot of people. So within 3 years, there were 145 officers of the rank of Major General and above in the PLA who had been dismissed on charges of corruption. Now here I must clarify that when they use the word corruption, it's an omnibus term. I mean, they may want to get you out for other reasons, but corruption is the easiest charge to put. And most of them, have committed various kinds of infractions, and in those days it was quite rampant. So
we have the famous case of Posilai.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they were dismissed. He did that. The second thing that he did was he began pushing the reforms that we referred to earlier, and he traveled to, I think, 650 PLA units across China, trying to convince the senior commanders and the officers and men of the need for the reforms before he actually pushed them through. And I think that plus the anti-corruption campaign ensured for Xi Jinping that his reforms would be not challenged or would be accepted. And 2015, end of 2015, he did push it through. And they were the furthest reaching reforms, really. He wanted the PLA to be cut to size, so there were 30,000 were anticipated to be removed, and they have since gone. He mainly ground forces. He also changed the structure of the PLA. So from 11 military regions, he went into 5. Now they become theatre commands. And so there is an integration taking place. And he changed the, the structure. We, of course, have the PLA, Air Force, Army, Navy, but he added the Strategic Support Force, the Information Force, etc. at that point in time. But it was the beginning. That has subsequently undergone more changes, so where we found the Strategic Support Force being further split. In fact, the Strategic Support Force vanished, but you had the Information Support Force, the Cyber Support Force, etc. coming up. And the logistics arm of the PLA also got a lot of profile. So he has changed the structure of the PLA. I don't know whether he is done with it or whether he is still going to carry out something more, because certain things are not very clear. Rocket Force, of course, is a new addition, but he has done that. The other thing was, and which you referred to, I would say not just the fourth plenum, but slightly before also, when he removed 9 of the top generals. Now, which came as a surprise to most observers, because all the generals today have been appointed by Xi Jinping.
Right.
And just after the last party congress, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, very interestingly, the day the party congress concluded, all the announcements were made with the new Politburo and the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee, etc. The Xinhua, which is the most authoritative voice of the CCP, they published a small dispatch saying that every member appointed to the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee has been personally vetted by Xi Jinping.
Right.
Now, most of these 9 guys who were removed, in fact, all of them except one, was a member of the Central Committee also, of the party, which means that they had cleared Xi Jinping's vetting.
Right.
And then he got after them and he removed them. Now, these 9 included all the theatre commanders, most of the theatre commanders, plus the recently appointed Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, He Wei-tung, who was actually Xi Jinping's appointee. He was helicoptered into the Central Military Commission. He was not even a member. He was helicoptered as a Politburo member because the PLA has 2 Politburo members. He was appointed the second one without having been a alternate member or full member of the Central Committee, indicating very clearly his proximity to Xi Jinping. And when you probe further, you find that he and Xi Jinping were drinking buddies when they were in Fujian. And Xi Jinping often used to go down on weekends particularly to the station where He Wei-tung was posted. So there was a lot of thing there, and therefore that came as a surprise. The second was of the political commissar, who again had been given an extended term by Xi Jinping. So, people were surprised that these 2 who had continued. But anyway, I did do some research into this after that, when, more information became available. One began looking around. And there are very clear hints. In fact, Chang Yaoxia, who is now the senior most vice chairman of the Military Commission, and who is a very close friend of Xi Jinping, in fact, second generation family friend. And he wrote an article just after the 4th plenum actually, where he hinted, it was not directly done, but it is very clear to my mind, that these people had started forming kind of, not cabals exactly, but groups or factions, if you want to call it. And that is one thing that Xi Jinping, I think, is very, very concerned about. Because if there's a faction, there's a potential for opposition. And he doesn't want that. And these would be his closest people. So that's why we found, first they went placed under investigation. And then, interestingly, to come to your point, they were removed before the 4th plenum. And, just a week or so, or 10 days before. Now, correctly, he should have waited for the 4th plenum to take the call. But once again, and he has done this earlier, before the last Congress, he demonstrated actually his authority by removing them. Earlier, if you recall, he had removed a Politburo member. So, by doing this, he indicated that he was actually in charge of the PLA. There have been a lot of rumors, incidentally, going around that Xi Jinping's position is weakened, that the dismissals and removals of generals means he's under fire. I frankly don't believe them. I think he's very much in charge. Chang Yaoxia is solidly with him from all that I can see. And his grip is firm. But the second indicator was that the people appointed to replace those removed, he had already moved them into position. And, they appeared one after the other. So you had the 9 guys gone and the new 9 guys there. No disruption. Then in case people still had doubts, they had the largest ever air, sea, land exercises of Taiwan. It's been the largest exercise. 100 aircraft and a lot of ships and their aircraft carriers, both the aircraft carriers there, which seemed to signal that the military capability of the People's Liberation Army had not been impacted adversely by the removal of the generals. So I think my inference in that, and by seeing the background of these people, is that possibly he felt two things. One, that there was this move to create groupism or factionalism. The second, that the commanders whom he removed were not very willing to launch any kind of a military operation against Taiwan. They were not ready.
Okay.
And they indicated that. I think Xi Jinping didn't want that. So the newer guys, I expect, would be more gung-ho, would be more willing. And that military exercise is one indicator. Of course, one can't say that they would do it, but that is the thing. What is holding everyone back in China is that they have an eye on the United States and they're wondering whether the US will step in or not if they do something. But I think that is the situation as it is today. But at the fourth plenum also, Xi Jinping once again repeated that during his term, he will recover Taiwan.
Yes.
He didn't clarify whether it will be by force or not, but he said he will recover. Now, how long will his term be? No one knows. But 2027 is the next party congress. And I'll take the risk of giving a forecast on your podcast. I feel that is when we will see tensions really rise. 2027, I anticipate, as things are today, one doesn't know tomorrow, Xi Jinping will probably go in for the next term, which will be a very unprecedented fourth term. And I think that is when we will see the pressures rise. And these pressures, incidentally, will not be only on Taiwan. They will also be on us, with our borders being unsettled. They will also be on Japan, on the Tiayu and Senkaku, what they call the Senkakus, and Vietnam. So we will all start facing renewed and heightened pressure, in my view, come 2027 and onwards.
That's
I hope
very
I've frightened you.
No, very, very interesting, sir. And since you mentioned that Taiwan was such a significant factor in kind of how the dismissal of these personnel happened. And also, since you talk of integration within the PLA, sir, I would like you to throw some light on the civil and civil-military fusion and the way the theatre commands function within the PLA, and if can India kind of draw some lessons, or if we do have some, how different is our system from how they function?
In one sentence, Bhavna, our systems are very different. And we are way behind, if I may say, in really harnessing all our resources into achieving capabilities. I think we are way behind there. And that is where the civil-military fusion really comes into play in China. It's not a new concept, it's been around for a while. But like many things in China today, Xi Jinping has really given it some teeth and pushed it forward. And at the risk of, I don't know whether I should or should not, but let me mention, in the book that I was referring to, Strategic Challenges, India 2030, that I've edited, there is a full chapter, full subsection on civil-military fusion. It is that important when you're looking at China.
Right.
Let me just say that what Xi Jinping has done, he has applied that to not only military development, he's applied that also to cyber and to chip manufacturing, etc. So what he has done there, they have identified various universities. And in their case, the universities are not just academic, as we say, temples of learning. They also apply their research. They have the funds to apply their research. and many of them, launch startups, etc. What they do is they have identified the universities and got them to apply their technologies to military applications, and told the military and the military equipment branch, they've got an equipment development department, etc., to use their technology or use their knowledge along with the universities in order to develop whatever they're doing. And that is how the civil military fusion works. I'll give you an example. For example, when China actually began looking at cyber warfare and began moving into that area, they've made a lot of strides in that. What they did was, the IT companies, what we may call shorthand, in China, like Alibaba and the others, ZTE, Huawei, he directed that these companies send their experts to the battalions set up in the PLA for cyber warfare. There are almost every group army or theatre has cyber battalions. So he has sent, these companies send their experts there, and they bring the PLA officers or men to their facilities so that they learn each other's techniques, etc. And of course, for the PLA, they have a lot to learn from the private companies. And that is how they have sharpened their cyber warfare capabilities. And they work in sync. The second thing that he did was, private players were also encouraged to come and may not join the PLA or whatever, but freelance for the PLA and freelance for the private companies. So that, they have combined all their assets and developed the capability, which today is huge. So this is what they have done. Whether it is development of hardware or whether it is development of a capability, their companies have really stepped up to the plate. Even in biological warfare, which many people don't look at, they have got medical universities, etc., which are focused only on biological warfare. Of course, they call it defensive, etc., but offense to defense is a question of intent changing. But they are doing that. And when we had that outbreak of COVID, in fact, we began looking at it, and it's scary, but you'll find that they're working on, tweaking the genetics of races to use as a biological warfare weapon. For example, if they find that Indians have a certain, racial makeup, maybe they'll look at North, Punjab and all that area, or the South or whatever, they divide them and then look at that and see whether they can mount a biological warfare, that means attack, which will only target that segment. Okay. So there was a lot of speculation at that time. I don't subscribe to it really, but it may have been at some level, that COVID was something that went wrong, it was part of that. Okay. One doesn't know. But they are working on that. I'm sure other countries are also working on it. But here it is, again, I'm just mentioning it as an example of science, academia and the military working hand in hand. That is civil military fusion. And that is something we can also apply. We have not yet, 70 years into our existence, been able to manufacture a jet engine. We are not yet able to develop even our pharma medicines, which we are talking about. There are ingredients that we don't make. Either we stopped making them because they're more cheaper to import from China, but we stopped. And the reason is that we have actually introduced a vulnerability where one need not exist.
Right.
Because if the Chinese switch off turn off the switch, we don't get that. And they have been doing it repeatedly. Rare earths was another example. We've had so many years in which to see what are the rare earths available in India, what we need, exploit them, and use them for private purposes as well as military purposes, instead of being dependent. And here we have, frankly, slipped up, and we have a lot to learn from the civil military fusion in China. Other countries are also doing it, But I think now we've all received a wake-up call.
Right, sir. You've rightly pointed out that how the Chinese have been completely upfront about these technologies, whereas India has been still been not come out with proper policies to kind of rein in those technological prowess. So, in this light, how would you see China's nuclear deterrence, the doctrines that they follow, and the strategies they have laid out, as well as if you see there are certain challenges or limitations that they may face, and which we could kind of try and rectify in our own approach?
Yeah, well, three things I'd like to mention. First off, that the Chinese have reached where they have on their own. So it's not necessary to have someone to hold your hand or get you there. I mean, the Chinese have done it. Yes, they have stolen technology, they have pilfered technology or whatever, but they've done it. So that is the first point I'd just like to flag. The second, and they've done a lot of theft, I mean, no doubt about it. In some cases, countries have collaborated with them without probably realizing what the end game is. But the Chinese end game has been very clear. As I mentioned, even on civil-military fusion, the target is to build their military capability and national strength. The second thing is the Chinese have always used ambiguity as part of their arsenal. So even on the nuclear thing, the wordings are such that nuclear powers, they differentiate between nuclear and non-nuclear powers. Now, if you look at India, we don't know where we are. In the sense, we are a nuclear power. Chinese say, no, you are not signed the, NPT, etc.
Yeah.
So, where does it leave us? But that's one part. But as far as deterrence is concerned, they've also said that they will not use it against, as I said, non-nuclear powers. But they've not said we will not be the first. I mean, in various ways they have indicated that. But ours is a very clear-cut position. But they had a certain nuclear arsenal. They have developed the launch capabilities. They have developed the missile capability for delivery. And here I must mention, in the context of ambiguity, they had deployed these missiles with the theatre commands. They have not clarified whether the missiles deployed with them are nuclear warheads, have nuclear warheads or not. But we are aware that at that time the Strategic Support Force and later on the Rocket Force, they have nuclear capable missiles and they are deployed in the theatre commands, including in our Western Theatre Command, which faces us. So can the theatre commander actually order these missiles to be launched or not? It's not clear cut. But this is clear that missiles up to a range of 300 kilometers, he can order their launch. Again, whether they're nuclear capable or not, we don't know. But the talk is generally among the Chinese that these are not nuclear capable. But anyway, I'm just saying that there is that ambiguity because these are there. What the Chinese have done, seeing that the world is stepping up their nuclear capabilities all over, people are building up more. I'm not talking about the US and Russia, which of course have huge arsenals. But what they did was, they first began indicating about 10 odd years ago that they are placing the warhead and the missile in close proximity to each other so that marrying them doesn't take much time. I mean, within minutes. And in some cases, they even hinted, I forget the name of that lady now, she's a Major General who's retired a few years ago of the PLA, who specialized in nuclear disarmament and all that. She said in some cases we have even, placed the warhead on the missile and stored it. So those are the first indications that there has been a change in their thinking and how they're going to go about it. And now, of course, there have been the revelations that by the Federation of American Scientists and others, that they have increased their arsenal, and they in fact satellite photographs showing that there are new silos that have come up in Xinjiang and Qinghai, where over 1,000, they're saying, missiles have been parked and more coming up. So their nuclear arsenal would have gone up, I would say, at least threefold to over 1,000. That's one part. The second is the range. They've steadily been increasing the range of the missiles. And today, they can target the United States. And that is the strength that they have and what they have been striving for. Because their target has always been to rival, if not surpass, the United States. And that remains their goal. So, deterrence against the United States is important. The ability to damage the United States is equally important, which is what they have acquired. And the ready demonstration of this is American reluctance, or shall I say hesitation, to enter the Taiwan Strait or the waters around because of the DF-21s that the Chinese are, waving every time, because those are what are called ship killers or whatever, but those are quite deadly missiles themselves. So there is now, the US also has to calculate, are they willing to run a risk and how much of a risk, etc., which is the first stage of deterrence. But I think the Chinese have moved, and I think they are preparing for, a more risky time ahead. And as I said, I draw your attention again to 2027, where things can get a bit hairy for them.
Right. It's since you mentioned about how China always compares itself with the US technology and their capabilities. So the recently released National Security Strategy report by the US, how do you see their strategy vis-a-vis China and China's response to US calculations? How that may kind of have any implications in the future? For the for US-China military as well as civil relations. How do you see that?
I think, we've all been waiting to see this national security strategy, which every US president brings out within the first few years of his taking over, or the first year. And I was in the US shortly before the document came out. And there in my interactions with various people, I found that there are differences of opinion now. Earlier, it was very clear that China is a threat and we have to deal with it. And they were trying to figure out how to deal with the Chinese. Now it was sort of becoming apparent to me that the way they were talking is that they were not clear that they will challenge or confront the Chinese. The term containment was dropped. And in fact, they began talking about outcompeting China.
Outcompeting.
And here, I don't know whether they will succeed or not, but their thinking was, at that time, before the National Security Strategy document, that they will put all their resources into developing and enhancing AI capabilities. And they thought that advances in high tech would be the way to outcompete China and retain their dominance. The Chinese, if you look at the fourth plenum and what they've done and their 15th five-year plan, have also put a lot of effort on high tech and AI. So everything is now AI plus. So both of them obviously have decided, to use a Chinese phrase, that the high ground of technology is what they will capture, and both are going for it. Here, I think there are two things that we need to keep in mind. I'm not drawing a conclusion, but what we need to keep in mind. The first is that for the US, whatever resources have to be put into high tech and AI, etc., is from private capital.
Right.
It is private business, what they are going to put in. And for them, the profit motive is obviously a major consideration, if not the only consideration. And secondary is, to be number one, again, in terms of business opportunity. For the Chinese, it's not. For the Chinese, it is a state which is setting the agenda.
Right.
And it is the state which will harness all the human resources and the financial resources and pour it into the sectors which they think is important.
Right.
So AI, etc., they will pour money into it. Now, to my mind, that indicates a bit of an imbalance in the race. Americans don't seem to see it that way, but I think it will be quite a lot of competition. The second point that I'd make here is that Trump won, did introduce barriers and prohibitions on the sale of advanced chips and technologies to chip making technologies to China. The Chinese did suffer, but they put a lot of resources into developing chips, and today they have reached a level where chips of a certain level are made domestically in China. Advanced chips, they have not yet reached that level. But the interesting thing is, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, they have been very keen on selling the latest and most advanced chips to China. They persuaded Trump to permit that would happen, and they've just announced it. But interestingly, Xi Jinping has told his companies, don't buy these chips. You develop your own. Now, that's one way of pushing his own capabilities, and I think that is the way they're going to do. Having said this, I will also add one caveat. I don't think that this application of sanctions on commercial, matters or trade, etc., is really going to set back the Chinese quest to become number one, or at least be on par with the United States. They will continue. And I think on this high technology and AI, again, as I said, there is going to be intense competition. Both sides are going to compete. The third is there are certain vulnerabilities that the US and the West have realized, and us. We should have realized it a long time ago, but now, which is the rare earths. Now, it's not that all the rare earths are only in China, but China has 90% dominance because they have exploited those rare earths, which is a very messy business to mine them and bring them out and then to reprocess them. It's damaging to the environment and all that kind of stuff. But the Chinese have done it, and today they have 90% control. And by turning off the tap, they've brought all the modern industry to a halt, actually. And then now they've said, okay, case by case, company by company, we will clear it. That's what they told the Americans. So your EVs, your hair dryers, your guidance, missile guidance system, everything is, subject to that. Now, they have done that. That is the third. So the United States has started trying to move on that, and they expect that within a few years they will. And I think within 5 years odd, they'll be able to build the capability. But they will have to give a pass to their concerns about climate, which Trump, of course, has already done. But the Europeans have got an issue there. So these are the things that I do see. So I'll just say that I have doubts whether this out-competing will succeed. And I think ultimately there will have to be a showdown, a kinetic showdown, confrontation between the two. It will take different shapes, but that's what I feel. And in this context, the national security strategy, which has been enunciated, in fact, introduces a degree of ambiguity also, because it doesn't mention China directly. But a lot of the steps that they have said are, if you look at it, they seem to be aimed at China. And now the steps that Trump is taking, there also he talks about Western Hemisphere. When he moved on Venezuela, also it was Western Hemisphere. But Chinese interests have been impacted there in a big way. So he seems to be moving in that direction. But certain things are not explanatory. I mean, pulling out of 66 international organizations, that means you're giving space to the Chinese to come in. Unless you say that these organizations don't matter, and I'm going to use brute force where it is required. So that is the state it is. I think the National Security Strategy document makes it clear that high-tech is going to be the issue, AI is going to be the issue. These are going to be the focal points. They do talk about American primacy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere. How it plays out with Europe and with Greenland and all that, now we will see. But I think at the end of the day, my feeling is, in fact, I would say my assessment is that unless there is a kinetic confrontation or showdown, between the US and China, this matter will not be resolved. And I think Xi Jinping is preparing for that. He expects that Chinese growth and Trump's actions are going to win the day for him. But let us wait and see. I think I can't say what will happen, but my sense is this.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us today. It was a pleasure having you. Your comments have been very insightful, and we are fortunate to have you speak here on this forum and get to know your views at such a length. And this conversation basically underscores several of China's perceptions and their demonstrated capabilities in terms of their defense architecture. And it also has certain lessons for India that what we can do suo moto, or and even take our own initiatives to be ahead of China if we can. So that brings us to the end of today's episode on Chintan Speaks. I'm your host, Dr. Bhavna Singh, and it has been a pleasure to host this conversation with an extremely knowledgeable speaker on the subject. With that, thank you all.